So thank you all for joining us today for our session around, um, oh wait, let me start over. Sorry, guys. Thank you all for joining us today for our session where our team will be covering the powerful insights of the CX Cloud. We truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to engage with Ray Allen. For over 20 years, our team has been working closely with Cisco to deliver to their partners IT asset management solutions that connect their channel, unify their sources of truth, and govern their data to drive real business outcomes. A few housekeeping items. This is a live event that is being recorded. We will be sharing the recording with each of you. If at any point today you have any questions around any of the content that is presented, feel free to enter them into the chat. Ben Strickland, a Cisco veteran over 20 years and has been driving our platform for years, will be in there to help answer some of these questions and field those questions to Donnie, who is our speaker today. He may or may not be delivering this discussion today in the middle of a storm. He is a new member of the Ray Allen team and a close to 30-year veteran from Cisco. Both these gentlemen come loaded with a deep wealth of knowledge around Cisco's tools and their partners. All right, that's enough for me. Donnie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shane. Yeah, right now the weather's holding out good, so I'm not anticipating any problems, but we'll see how it goes. So first, I want to welcome everybody for coming. One of the common questions that when I talk to people about doing a presentation on the power of CX Cloud is, wait, CX, that's customer. I'm a partner. What's that got to do with me? And what I really hope to be able to do is to go through this session and kind of show you using the data that Cisco provides as part of the CXPX solution, how you can use that data to improve the operations, maybe potentially open up some new sales opportunities or managed service opportunities. CX Cloud is absolutely the customer experience portal for Cisco. PX Cloud is the partner experience portal. But we're not going to focus on those. What we're going to do is dive in kind of to some of the data and the systems that are involved around that. So
Donnie, I think we lost your audio, but.
Oh, fun. All right. So hopefully on this page, maybe?
Yeah, on this page, you're good.
Okay.
You can start from here. Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. So ultimately, when we're talking about CX and PX Cloud, what we're really talking about is success tracks, right? As Cisco brands it. And what success tracks is really about a digital connection between Cisco's customers and Cisco. And the motivation around this is ultimately what Cisco wants to do is get out of the business of selling, technology, selling boxes, right, selling one-offs, and really get into selling value. As Warren Buffett, I think, quoted one time, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And the way you get to value, right, is to start looking at the life cycle of your assets, right, from a customer perspective, and also from a partner perspective. And then around those assets, developing something called use cases, right? These are scenarios like the use case may be deploying the box, configuring the box, ensuring compliance with configuration. And those insights, to be able to manage them properly, needs insights. And these insights are really about what CX data provides you. Then from all of that, you can evolve that into really a solution, right? Your people, your process, and your tool, and how that solution can then be presented not only as a partner internally on how to better manage customers and better engage with your customers, but also from the customer's perspective in terms of how they can better manage their assets. And eventually all of this leads to an increased adoption in the speed of the technology, which then leads to the actual value that the customer is trying to achieve with the technology that they bought. From Cisco's perspective, right, success tracks are really about that digital connection. It's about the technology that the customer buys from Cisco, having that technology adopted, deployed, and utilized. Because ultimately what Cisco and as a partner you're motivated in is seeing that the solutions that you're selling are being used. If they're not being used, right, then the customer's probably not going to do the renewals. If the software is bought but not deployed, they're not likely to renew that software. And so ultimately, Cisco is trying to remove any barriers to the customer as they try to deploy these solutions. And they're doing that through providing this data not only to the customers, but also providing the data. And I got to figure out what's going on there. Also providing the data to the customers and the partners to provide insights to empower them. So from a customer's perspective, what does a success track mean? A success track really is about operational data. It's about the insights that they get into the equipment that they've deployed. What are the situations that are going on in their network? Do they have bugs? Do they have crash risk? Right? Is the equipment deployed? What are their skills gaps? Is there training that they need in order to properly deploy the equipment? Is there training they need to scale it out or to address particular security issues, et cetera? And all of that is for the customer, the end customer purchasing, to realize, again, going back to that theme, right, to realize that value in the money that they spent on the equipment that they deployed. Success tracks for partners is slightly different, right? If you look at a success track, this data, while it's very operational focus on the customer, can be used by the partner in a number of ways. Number one is to establish trust, right? To establish a connection between the partner and the customer, where the partner demonstrates, not in words, but in actions and deeds, demonstrates that they understand the customer's business needs and they understand their ultimate goal. And through this, they can look for opportunities. The partners can upsell, cross-sell, or potentially provide professional services. And through those professional services, they may come as branded maintenance, could come as training, or it could come and just simply goodwill to help the customer through, you know, maybe a deployment issue, or maybe some bug that they've got, or helping them triage software versions. But ultimately, it's around building that trust and getting that visibility so that you can then make good business decisions. I'm not going to read this slide to you. I'm going to pause here just for a second as your eyes focus on, like, you know, there's tons of data here. But a common question I do get around success tracks is, well, what's the difference between a success track and SmartNet TotalCare? Or what's the difference between a success track and solution support? This slide will be available to you. You can look at it. It kind of goes through and highlights out the key pieces of where SmartNet TotalCare comes in, solution support, success tracks, PLS, branded PLS. So this is here for your reference. You can take it away later and kind of read it. If you've got questions, you can reach back to us. But just wanted to give you kind of a quick view of how the different capabilities, you know, whether you're looking at learning credits that are available in a success track, but not SmartNet, whether you're looking at hardware and software support versus only hardware support. And then ultimately how Cisco is going to evolve this into a partner branded support around a partner support or lifecycle support, and kind of where Cisco in the future say that they want to go. Now, we're talking a lot about data, and one of the things you'll commonly hear is around insights. So what's data and what's data insights? Well, think of data as a map, right? It's like the map of the US or the map of the world or the map of Europe. Data is just this big amount of information that gives you all types of location, building, roads, etc. Insights around that, the data insights, is really about having a roadmap. So it's nice to have this big map, but you kind of need a roadmap to know where you're going to go, because ultimately you're trying to get to a place where you've got your equipment deployed or you've got your EA ready for renewal, right? And then along there, actionable insights, take those and change just simply the insights into things that actually you can do something with. So it's nice to know that, you know, there's going to be 3 stops along your way, but knowing what you need to do with those stops become even more. So think of that as kind of like a turn-by-turn directions, right? And Cisco refers to these as in terms of their use cases and their pit stops, and then the actions of the pit stop. So you can kind of think of what Cisco calls a pit stop as just building that roadmap, and then what Cisco calls actions, you can think of those as your turn by turn, the things that you need to do. Ultimately, what we want to get here is, as Ben would say, is from interesting data insights to useful, actionable insights. And ultimately, this is what we're going to use the data to do, is get from that interesting to that useful. Now, all of this is dependent on data. If you don't have data, you can't get to the insights, right? If you don't have a map, there's no way you can build a roadmap. So this all leads back to one of the key tenets and where Cisco is really pushing around Success Tracks. A customer has a portfolio of assets. Now, some of this Cisco may know about, right? They through selling it, they know the serial number of the box, they know the kind of box, they've seen the software you're downloading, they know the software license. But through observability, they can then get additional information. What version are you running? Just because you bought a license and downloaded a version doesn't mean it's deployed. Has the customer deployed a golden image on all of their boxes? Are they compliant? So all of this comes into an agentless set of collectors, which Cisco provides, like DNA Center, AC Intersight, or the new one they've come out with is the CX Cloud Agent, which is basically a virtual machine that provides an agentless collector inside the network. And then through these will collect additional data, additional information that insights can be built, like what are your configs, what features are you running, what software version are you running, and ultimately through that additional data, Cisco can then bring that into CX Cloud. Once it makes it into CX Cloud, what Cisco does is they perform a lot of analytics on that data. And part of the analytics they do is they triage their tax databases. They look at the bugs that have been filed and look at the notices and the P-certs, and then they map that back and provide that back to the customer as going, hey, you're running this hardware with this software, there's a bug, you might want to pay attention to it. And examples of part of what I just told you, right, which is around what software are you running? What license do you have? What are the architectural insights that can be gained? Now, ultimately, what this is going to drive back to is being able to provide to the customer webinars, training opportunities, additional software, upsell, cross-sell opportunities. And from the partner perspective, again, CX data for the customer is more operational focus. CX data from a partner perspective is really more about understanding the customer's business and building the loyalty and looking for the opportunity and helping the customer change something like an EA renewal from a 2-month crash course in asset allocation to ongoing day-by-day clean data approach so that renewals are understood, easy to do, and ready. This is also, from a partner's perspective, opportunity to see where customers are stuck. Where are they having problems? Is it in onboarding? Is it in problem mediation? Is it in adoption? Is it in deployment and optimization? All of this information then helps the partner build out services that the customer, their customer, can then utilize to gain value from the products that they bought. And that value will ultimately lead to renewal opportunities. So CX Cloud and PX Cloud, right? These are two portals that Cisco provides. The CX is a web portal that customers log into, and PX Cloud is a web portal that partners log into. These two work together. So from that observability, from those collectors, when that data flows into CX Cloud, Cisco then runs that analytics against the data and then passes that data over to PX Cloud. Within PX Cloud, partners then can begin to get views about their business and their portfolio of customers. Partners also have limited ability to click through from PX Cloud and actually see some of the data that the customer is doing in a one-by-one fashion. So if I'm a customer manager, I can actually log in to my partner's PX account, and then from there gain some insights and visibility on customers that I'm going to work with. Ultimately, these are Cisco's web portals to present the data that we've been talking about up to this point. And again, as I said before, data is necessary. Without this data, I have no map. Without the map, I can't have a roadmap to how I get to where I want to be, which is a statement of value. So ultimately, from Cisco's perspective, adoption of the SesTrack is about deploying the collectors and getting that data. As a partner, what you're going to want to do is work to your customer to explain to them why it's valuable for them to deploy the collectors, right? Because this will be an additional OpEx cost to them, right? They're going to have to, manage the devices, monitor the devices, upgrade. So they need to get value back. They need to understand why they should do this. And using that data, you can explain to your customers around, it being foundational to being able to make informed decisions, to be able, not just from your perspective, but from the customer's perspective, to achieve their business outcomes, to understand what their operational challenges are, understand where they need help in terms of training, managed services, and understand where they have risk that they can address proactively instead of reactively, ultimately understanding the bigger picture of their portfolio. But, it comes back to, why would a customer do it? The analogy that I would use is, if I brought you a television and as I was dropping it off, I handed it to you and said, oh, by the way, can you please give me a full list of all of the TVs, radios, kitchen appliances, all of your furniture. I want a full list of everything in your home. You'd probably look at me and say, Donnie, what are you talking about? Get out of here, dude. Go away, right? However, if I happen to be, doing the nice thing of bringing you the TV because I was, heading to your house anyway, and I was your insurance agent, and I was working with you to make sure that you have homeowners insurance and all of the assets in your home are covered, you would immediately look and go, oh, I see the value in that. I see what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to deliver a service to me that is valuable to me. And this is the same way. As a partner, when you're talking to the customer, you need to be able to articulate to them the value that you're bringing, the fact that you understand their business, the fact that you're not just trying to sell them another box, but you actually can show them how that box will fit in a critical service and meet a critical need. And to foster that relationship, because ultimately that relationship of you working with your customer improves the customer's business outcomes and the efficiency. And so as you begin to talk to customers about how to actually adopt SuccessTracks, you really want to be having a value conversation with them about why this is important. Have clearly established roles, clear understanding of responsibilities of what the data is going to be used for, how the data is valuable for them, and by them providing it to you, how you can provide them additional value overall. Now, I've used the word value a lot because it's very important, but ultimately it's going to come back to building that relationship. Now, the other thing that comes into play is when you're thinking about services, right? People, process, and tools, is how do you bring this in, all of this data to bring it into your tool? It's very inconvenient to have to log into your portal and log into Cisco's portal and then log into the customer's portal just to build the data sets that you need to go have a conversation. And so Cisco has provided a set of APIs. As the data rolls into CX Cloud and goes into PX, there are both CX and PX APIs that partners have access to. And through those APIs, you can pull that data directly into your platform. We've done it. I'm going to show you a couple of use cases here in a minute of how we've actually done that, how we've brought that data in, and how we've utilized that data to begin building insights for the partners that work with us. So one of them is fairly obvious, right? If you've got the data, you can look at how the customer's adopting the SuccessTrack. You can figure out, are they actually deploying the various collectors? Are they actually bringing the data in? Are you seeing them in the SuccessTrack? See the use cases start to close out. See the pit stops starting to get checked off. You can begin seeing the actions, right? And you can generate reports to go back to your customer and say, hey, here's some things that you need to be doing to improve your network and improve the efficiency of your network. You can then also begin looking at this and reporting back into Cisco about the customer's adoption. Cisco is providing incentives to partners to get customers to onboard their success track and adopt their success track. So this becomes an opportunity for you to get metrics back that you can take back to Cisco to show how your practice is actually having the customers deploy and adopt success tracks. Because at the end of the day, if a customer buys a success track from you and they don't deploy the collectors and they don't get the data in and the analytics is not performed, they're not likely to renew that success track when it comes up. So having visibility of that adoption is very important. From our perspective in our portal, we've actually built out the ability to see this adoption, to show you the number of pit stops that you have in graphical form, to be able to drill into the data and show which success tracks a customer has. And also the other interesting thing is if you look at the data Cisco's providing, Cisco's CX data is for assets that are part of a success track. If you have other data, and we do, right, around assets that are not part of a success track, you can begin to fold that in and begin to develop a larger picture, right? Using the source of truth around CX data, around sales data, partner data, customer data, you can bring all this together and then begin getting a bigger picture of where the customer is around their success track. And by looking at the assets that are not part of the success track, you can have conversations like, would you like to upsell another success track, right? Is there another opportunity there that the customer hasn't taken advantage of? The other thing you can begin looking at is around those assets of why aren't they there? Is it a matter of, hey, I just haven't deployed the collector and therefore it's not part because it hasn't been included? So that you can have bigger conversations with customers around their entire portfolio instead of, one or two boxes at a time. We also drill into those use cases, pit stops, and actions that I talked about. We drill in and we show you which ones are complete, which ones are not complete. We show you the devices. We actually allow you to drill down to an individual device and say, this device is currently on this use case. It's at the deploy DNA pit stop, and the action is I need to deploy the DNA center, or potentially I need to use the DNA center to configure my asset, right? And I haven't done that piece yet. Or maybe I need to establish my action for the pit stop I'm on might say, hey, you need to establish what your standard configuration for your switches are for compliance reasons. And so maybe I've already deployed and the DNA center is controlling my switch, but I actually haven't established what my compliance, what my configuration is for that switch. I can then, as a partner, see this and have conversations with the customer around, how can I help you with that? And then ultimately, that's going to feed back to the customer around optimizations in their business processes, which in turn saves them money, which in turn is going to make them more attached to you as a value partner because they see that you understand their business and they see that you're actually trying to help them be successful and not just sell them something. It also, because you can generate these reports, it can take some of the manual work out of it, right? If you're looking at your devices and you're trying to figure out what success track, what devices are in the success track, or their devices not included in the success track, you can take some of that manual labor and actually bring it into the tool and begin presenting it in that fashion. Ultimately, what you're trying to get the customer to is one where they've improved their operational efficiency so that they can begin to see across their portfolio, across all of their technology, what's the state of their affairs? Are they running good software versions? Have they adopted golden images? The golden images that they have adopted, are they actually being deployed? Do they have pieces of equipment sitting in labs or in other parts of the organization that just simply haven't loaded? And then they can also begin looking at software recommendations. I know I've worked with some very large customers in the past at Cisco, and one of the big things that we would get involved with as engineers is around what we call bug scrubs. And it was basically when a partner working with a customer, the customer would want to deploy a new version of software. But before deploying that version of software, they would want to understand what are the bugs in that software and would one of those bugs potentially impact their business? And so we would get in these spreadsheets that would come from the partner to the account team and the account team down to the engineer going, hey, tell me all the bugs that are in this version, this version, this version. As an engineer, I promise you, we hated it, right? But it was very important, right? Because ultimately, where the customer was trying to get to is a version of software that looked like it was an appropriate level of quality that they could then spend money to have tested and verified that they could then put into production. Well, a lot of that now is kind of part of the data, right? We can begin, Cisco provides, what is the latest software on for a particular, maybe you've got a 9200, right? What's the latest software there? Are you running it? The other thing is Cisco is providing information around providing you've established what your golden image is, right? And as a partner, you can explain to the customer what that is and why it's valuable. You can then begin looking for those devices. And we give you those reports in our tool. Now, your tool could do the same thing. Our tool does this, and we're rolling it out. We also provide links out to actual Cisco URLs where you can click and go and actually see the Cisco information that explains what maybe a particular software issue is, why it's critical, why it might matter to me. And then I can use that to make a proactive decision about when to deploy either my golden images or my recommended software images. I can actually start making decisions today without having to wait until an event happens in the network. And as a partner, you can actually go in and start having conversations with the customer saying, hey, did you realize that you've got a couple of old boxes out here? Can we do a tech refresh? The newest version of software is 17.10. Your box doesn't support that. Let's have a conversation. And as a customer, if I was sitting there and going, wow, somebody's looking out for my good, I'm going to appreciate that, right? And I'm going to appreciate that person helping me not have to be up at 2 a.m. because I've got a network outage. And then ultimately that ties into operational insights, which is kind of what I've been heading at up to this point. If you look at where CX Cloud data is and that data flowing into the CX Cloud portal, the customer can go there and get many of these insights. But it does require the customer to be proactive, to go to Cisco's website, log in, means multiple of the people within their operations team may have to have access and to be able to go in and for their piece of the portfolio, figure out if these information, if these bugs or field notices or P-certs are important to them. Using, like a partner branded tooling, you can actually start rolling this up into an entire portfolio view, providing it in so the customer can see this. With the number of, cyber attacks that are happening and the attack surfaces ever expanding, right? Things like addressing P-certs in a proactive fashion are critical. You can't wait until, Cisco announces, a P-cert with, like a level 9 criticality. You can't wait for that to be tripped in your network to go respond to it. You need to know about it up front so that you can go ahead and put the mediation in place today. As a partner, if you're working with a customer and you've got insights into these advisories that are coming out of Cisco, you can be proactive and maybe even build a practice around that, right? If you're offering some type of a managed service, you can bring that knowledge into your managed service and you can actually start responding before it becomes an issue. So as you see, as part of your managed service, you're managing assets for your customer, a P-cert come along, you can go ahead and plan that. You can schedule it, get that into your network. And then if the customer comes back later and says, oh, hey, Cisco sent me a P-cert, I found it in my inbox. You go, yeah, we've taken care of that, right? Because why? You had the CX data, you knew the software was there, you knew what the P-cert advisory was, and you were able to plan and work with your team to go ahead and get the software update on the device done, completely avoiding any of it. We provide that data in our portal in both graphical form and data form. We can show by device what the total number of bugs are, what the total number of issues are on the device, what the crash risk are on the device. And we provide basically a summary. Now we allow you to drill into each one of these. We have pages to drill into them, but we kind of give you first a big picture so that you can look per device. Now you can do this by technology or by serial number, so you can drill down to individual devices. You can also come in and look at the advisories, and we do provide links out to the actual P-cert or links out to the actual notice that Cisco provided for hardware or for software. So all of this information we pull in, we take the manual process of going around doing show versions on boxes, right? We take that data that's coming from those collectors that flowed into CX, that Cisco performed the data analysis on, and then provided in the CX PX APIs. We can then bring that back, integrate that with all the other data that we've got for all of the other boxes we got, and then start building out product family summaries, serial number summaries, software version summaries that are actually actionable, right? They're not just a map, they're not just a roadmap, but they're actually give you the turn by turn of what you need to do to keep your network, or if you're managing it for the customer, or to educate the customer on the actions they need to secure that network, and to be proactive about it, not be reactive. Don't wait for the problem to manifest it to go do the solution. Go ahead and get it up front. All of this leads to reduce downtime, reduce risk. Having these insights, right, to be able to flow in actually provides for reduced risk of downtime through crashes, reduced risk of downtime through cyber attacks, reduced risk of downtime through hardware problems that are maybe manifesting themselves. All of this ultimately for the customer. And if you've got a branded service around maintenance, or you've got a branded service around support, ultimately lead to that. Now, the other thing that, if you're looking at bugs, one of the things that can happen is, some customers have the ability to go directly to Cisco and file a case, or they go to the partners tool, and through the partners tool, they file an attack case. Now, depending on your relationship with Cisco, Cisco may offer you incentives to not open those cases. Well, if you can come out and say, hey, I noticed that, serial number JVA 603DS1 just had 5 crashes in the last 60 days. Well, you can go ahead and get ahead of that. You can go ahead and have that conversation with the customer of, let's take a look. Why has that box started crashing? Did you recently do a software update? Maybe there's a bug in the software. Maybe we need to down rev. Or maybe the box hasn't changed, but it's getting old, and maybe there's a chassis problem or a backplane problem or a line card problem. Let's go ahead and get ahead of that, fix that now, meaning that attack case never gets open, means that when you report into Cisco how many cases you open, you actually look better. And then that can in turn, like I said, depending on your relationship, might drive back incentives to your company for those reduced cases. Clearly, if you're offering a branded management service, using the data that I've showed up to this point can be critical, because it can help your service team actually be proactive in identifying problems, identifying bugs, making sure the right software is run, look for these crash reports, look for which devices are crashing, how often they're crashing, and go ahead and put into operation procedures to address that before it becomes a problem. And you can also pay attention to whether the crash is a high crash risk, low crash risk, because some of these crash reports that you get out of the portal aren't that the box crash, but it's a possibility the box might crash. And what's the criticality? Like, is there a high chance it's going to crash, a low chance it's going to crash? And the same with bugs, right? You might have a P1 bug, and maybe it's a P1, but it's a low. And you go, well, wait, if Cisco said it was a P1 bug, why would it be low to the customer? Well, maybe they're not using the feature that's associated with it, right? So through that data, what software is there, and that software is a potential P1. That in that P1, that crash possibility is related to, say, let's say router BGP, but on this particular box, you're not doing BGP. You're only doing an IGP routing protocol. So that means that the likelihood that the BGP bug is going to crash your box is very low, because, well, you're not using BGP. So you can use that information to be able to go back to the customer and say, hey, I know Cisco's got this P1, but we don't really need to worry about it right now. Let's plan for the upgrade. You're not really using the feature that's being impacted. So ultimately, all of this comes back to kind of the goal of Success Tracks, right? As we begin looking at this and looking at the data and how you might integrate the data into your solution, right? You want to come back and look at, what does that do for the processes that you have in-house? Does it modify them? Does it optimize them? Does it mean that you just don't need to do that anymore? Maybe you used to have to run spreadsheets and pass it around to people. And maybe all that's now not needed because you can go and download the spreadsheet at any time you need it without having to request it. So that can accelerate your internal operations. It can also help with the customer relation. It can help you create additional services, right? Either through managed services around maintenance, managed services around maybe training, maybe deployment, other things to help reduce the cost of the customer and improve the customer's efficiency. And all of this ultimately, having these insights ultimately leads to a couple of different things, right? You can drive more sales. You have opportunity for new sales that you didn't have before. This can ultimately lead through enhanced profitability, either through case management, reduction of case, through accelerating the adoption of success tracks, right, to get rebates back from Cisco. It can ultimately streamline your internal processes and remove maybe some manual steps, right, that improve. And ultimately, again, going back, all the way back to the first of the deck, where do you want to get? You want to get from what you're paying to what the value is. And as you look at your life cycle of the assets and you begin looking at your customers' portfolio, having these insights allow you to bring up that level of knowledge, have a higher visibility, see the different assets that are in their portfolio, understand where those assets are, understand the risk associated with those assets, understand any impediments that your customer might have to adopting those. All of this leads back to, if the customer's using it, they're probably going to renew it. They're probably going to keep buying the service. If they're not using it, they're not going to buy it. And if they're not buying it, that means they didn't perceive value out of it. And so again, going back to the theme, right, what we want to get to is a statement of value. You want to show to the customer where you bring value using this data to improve their business efficiencies, help them achieve their outcomes, and ultimately to lower their overall cost. At the same time, for you, providing upsell, resell, services, and accelerating your own business and improving your own process. All right. With that, I want to thank you. I am a little bit early.